Welcome to the Spiritual Transformation Podcast. I'm your host, Mary Beth, founder of DayOneLifeCoaching, where I offer both one-on-one and group coaching on spiritual transformation. And this podcast is an extension of what I do in my coaching practice. And today I have an amazing guest, Nichole Bigley. I'm going to read her bio real quick, but how are you doing, Nichole? How's it going
I'm
today?
doing great. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm so happy to have you. We'll have to tell a little bit of our story of how we met.
Yes.
So, for the last 24 years, Nichole Bigley has been transforming lives, including her own. She is the creator and host of A Psychic Story, a top 4 spiritual podcast in the United States, receiving millions of downloads a year with listeners in all 195 countries around the world. I didn't even know we had that many.
I know. Depending on which reference source you look at.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm learning something new. In order to help kids and teens shift their vibration, develop their intuition, and become more empowered as a result, Nichole created a spin-off podcast, A Psychic Story, Kids Edition. That's cool. She is also the creator and host of Supernatural Matters, a global podcast that dives into the mystical and surreal, helping people determine what is natural or supernatural. Looking for Angels, a guide to understanding and connecting with angels is Nichole's first book with co-author Scott Guerin. Did I say his name right?
Guerin.
Guerin, darn it, Ph.D., where they break down complex spiritual topics, making it easy to understand and incorporate into everyday life. And to learn more about Nichole, we'll have all of your links. We'll have everything in the description box. But you can visit her on or follow her at A Psychic Story, on social media. You're on everything.
Mhm.
So perfect. Well, Nichole, let's get right into it. Like, I guess, when did you first realize that you were psychic?
So I would say I've been psychic my whole life, and that is, I don't know if you want me to go in my birth story. Maybe we can talk a little bit about that later.
Wherever you want
But
to start.
as I started to get older, I just noticed that there were certain moments or certain things that I would either receive information or I would be able to feel certain things either energetically or emotionally. And I just thought that that was something that everybody could do. But also
Right.
because on both sides of my family, my mom's side of the family, my dad's side of the family, everyone for the most part was pretty psychic. I mean, the men, the women, my aunts, my uncles, my grandparents. And so I just thought, hey, this is what everybody does. It's not because anyone did it professionally in my family that I know of, going back like generations, but it was just something that was part of the family. And it wasn't until I was starting to go to like school more, in kindergarten and first grade and second grade, and definitely in high school, where it would just like clued in, hey, this is not necessarily something that everybody talks about, or if they do experience it, they don't discuss it. But also, my family would say if there were certain experiences, even, that they would have or I would have, they would be like, just let's keep this in the family. Let's just keep it amongst ourselves. Because at the time I was born, in the late 70s, it was, people would think you were cray cray or a
Oh
little bit
yeah.
out
Oh
there
yeah.
if you talked about it. So it was very much like inside the family, not outside the family type of conversation. But yeah, I would say that was just my whole life, knowing and growing up.
I love it. Yeah, and I hear that so much from people. And I'm glad we're getting to the point, like with your podcast, how you get to your purpose is to actually demystify things and be like, hey, you guys, the supernatural is actually natural. And
Hmm.
and I can relate to you because I've had like paranormal experiences my entire life. And then I realized pretty quickly that when you talk about it, people think you're cray cray. And I lived in a haunted house and I wanted to tell people like, oh my God, you wouldn't believe, like, it was poltergeist levels craziness. And so yeah, I had to just quit telling those stories because I just would try to tell anybody who would listen to me, and it sounded,
Well, when you're going through it, it is something that you want to talk about for sure, because especially if it's not everyday experiences, but also if it is everyday experiences, it's like you just want to discuss it and talk about it. So,
yeah, I actually I thought it would be cool before moving into a haunted house. I would always thought, wow, that'd be pretty cool, but quickly realized, because I had a young son, he was only 5 at the time, and a yellow lab, a dog, who were very poorly affected by this poltergeist situation, and it was not good. So we moved out pretty quickly. It was less than a year long that we
Mhm.
and time to move.
You're like, all
That
right,
was a
been there,
good
done that. Don't
decision.
need to experience it anymore.
It wasn't as cool as I thought it would be.
Yes.
I mean, it was cool. It was, and but except for the negative effects. And
So
it
did you know it was? Sorry, I don't mean to be the
not
interviewer,
no,
but
not when
okay, I can't remember.
I almost was going to bring this up on your podcast, and we ran out of time. And oh yeah, thank you for having me on your show. By the way, that was amazing.
Of course.
Yeah, we did not know when we moved in. What I was told, since I know so many psychic people and mediums, I was asking everybody like that, and they said, well, basically, it was already something like I think they called it an energy vortex. And it was
Mm.
already something that was there, but between me and my son and the animals, we kind of woke it up because we're
Mm.
all so open. And they actually said my son is a portal. I mean, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I
All
heard it
right.
from, I heard it from so many people that I'm like, well, maybe that's true about him. But yeah, he was able to command. So like talking about angels,
Hmm.
that there would be, anytime we take a picture, there'd be orbs just everywhere. And some of them had faces like
Wow.
everywhere. It was very, very, I don't know the word, but not infested. That's not the right word. There was a lot of
Crowded.
action,
It was crowded.
a lot of action, a
It
lot of
was
action.
crowded.
But he would go, okay, I want to see 13 angels when I take this picture, because he was 5, so he was having fun with it at first.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
13. Then he would say, okay, I want to see 32. 32. They would just
Whoa, that's specific.
very crazy. They didn't do that
Of
for me.
course, then he woke it up or whatever it was.
I
If
know
they're doing that
he
sort of
liked the
stuff. Yeah.
attention, yeah. But so yeah, that was an interesting experience. Like I'm not a person who can be like, oh no, I don't believe, that we didn't have that luxury. Sounds like you didn't either. So do you see angels? Like or with your
Yeah.
naked eye, or how does that work?
So yeah, great question. When I was younger, I'll kind of go back to the first experience I would say that I had that I knew that something else was going on. I was playing in my room and it's hard because when you look back in your childhood, you're trying to remember the ages. I would say I was probably like 4 or 5-ish or whatever. And I just felt this presence in the room. It was almost like I would explain as if like you were sitting right in front of me and I could just feel your personality or your energy.
Yeah.
And so I knew something was there, but I couldn't see it. I couldn't hear it. I didn't know exactly what it was, but I felt comforted. I felt very safe. It was very peaceful. And it's like, I'm just playing with my toys and everything. And this was also around the time where, kids are talking about their imaginary friends and everything else. And I didn't
Mhm.
have any imaginary friends. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And part of me always wondered if the other children were making it up or if they actually were seeing something that I couldn't see or whatever. So I was just like, okay, that's interesting, kind of creative imagination. But this was very different for me as far as, again, me feeling and kind of acknowledging this presence. And so after a while and just feeling like it's always constantly around me, I just started more having a conversation. It was in my head, that inner dialogue, which not everybody has an inner dialogue, but I definitely do. And I was just like, what are you? Who are you? That sort of thing. And then I heard it was more of a thought hearing. It wasn't like hearing a voice or anything else like that. Michael, my name is Michael. And so I just called Michael. It wasn't my imaginary friend. I just called him Michael. And so then it wasn't until I got older and I was diving more into angels and archangels and using my intuition in a more sophisticated manner that I made the connection that it was Archangel Michael.
Nice.
And so, but to answer your other question about do I see them? Yes, now I sometimes will see flashes of light and colors. It kind of reminds me of bigger sparklers or what people would say is orbs, but sometimes they're light, like actually white or golden light. And then others, if it's Michael in particular, I see blue. A lot of times when I'm in sessions, as I'm just talking, because I'm talking to you right now, but I'm not looking at you, because I have to kind of focus my thoughts and the information that comes through, I'll just see like big flashes now, depending. And so that's one way, but it doesn't happen all the time. It's not like I can see them like some people that I know or I've spoken to or been on my podcast where they see the actual beings themselves in
Yes.
not physical, either physical form or like energetically. I think that's really cool. It was a long time where I told them I didn't want to see them like that because I thought it would freak me out. Now I think it would be pretty cool. But also the other way that I see them is in my mind's eye or my third eye. And we can talk about that a little bit later, but in more detail if you want. But they show me as like themselves as beings of light. And that's how they project to me. And then depending on, I kind of talk about feeling, or I talk about this a little bit about how I feel the energy. And there's definitely angelic energy, guardian angel energy, archangel, and I mean, there's so many different types. Our loved ones feel very different. Our pets feel very different. And so I'm able to, once I see it in my mind's eye, kind of feel that out a little bit. And that's really how I connect with angels and experience them.
That's so cool. And yeah, I think talked about that on your podcast because I see him kind of like you do and I haven't seen him very often at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think twice, but they were colorful orbs instead of just
Yeah.
regular. They were just different colors, beautiful colors,
Mm-hmm.
and they dance around. And they were in the corners. They were in the corners of a room. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know if that meant anything, but that's how they were to me. And that story that I told you on your podcast where my hairstylist is going through a lot of health problems and she prayed to talk to angels, and I pray every day to angels. And then but she didn't want to see them. So they showed themselves to me to give her the message, which
It's always cool how
yeah,
spirit
it was
works
very
like
cool.
that.
Yeah, it was very cool. Yeah, and I told you that after being on your podcast, and we had all those synchronicities with meeting my friend from Austin, Texas.
Yeah, let's tell that story. Let's tell
Yes.
that story first. We should have started with that. How did we meet? Yeah.
Shout out to Marsha in Austin. We've been really great friends since she was like, I think we were 13 or 14 years old. Houston, Texas is where we were back then. And she tells me a week before I met you, like I didn't know who you were, I didn't know anything about your podcast, but she's like, "Oh, you would love this podcast, a psychic story, Nichole Bigley." And I'm like, "Okay." And she sends me one of your episodes, and I was instantly obsessed. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, she knows me. You know, it's right up my alley." And that whole week, every day, I was listening to multiple episodes every day. Then I go to the Victory of Light, which is now Body, Mind, Spirit Expo
Mm-hmm.
in Cincinnati, and I was leaving. I was actually heading out the door with my dog, and I see, because I brought my dog to the expo,
Of course. Why wouldn't you?
Rico Suave, like
love that,
everybody
yeah.
loves Rico, and I see your background. I'm like, oh my God, a psychic story. And then so I was leaving, and I come back in, and I'm like, I gotta go say hi. That's so crazy. I had no idea you were gonna be there. And so we start chatting, and I told you that story, and yeah, I got a reading from you and everything.
Yeah, then you got a session.
I got a session. Why not? And it was just perfect synchronicity. And you had just moved up here from like Atlanta, I think. Was it Atlanta?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Now
I
we
think it
both
was
live
the
in the
very
same town.
first. Yeah, I don't remember if that was April or November when we met. It must have been November, I believe. But anyway,
I
yeah,
can't
because
remember.
it was pretty recent as far as when.
Yeah, yeah. And then and I was all nervous to be on your show because I'm like, but I'm not a psychic. Like I don't make money being a psychic. I'm a spiritual coach, but like I don't, but you were like, don't worry, we're calling it spiritual recovery. And you know, and it is like, and I do, like we all are psychic, you know, we're gonna talk about that too, that we all are. It's just how much are you tuned in? And I do get downloads and I do get that stuff. And I think
Yeah.
we just don't give ourselves enough
Credit.
or
Yeah.
we don't realize where it's coming from. But yeah, I think I'm pretty good now at discerning. Okay, that was not from me. That was blocks of thought dropped in my head.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, the other thing that you didn't mention, and I don't really remember sessions or information I get intuitively. It's literally like in one ear and out the other for me. And I think it's partially because it's not meant to be. We're not meant to keep other people's
Retain.
secrets or information. And when you energetically disconnect, but also the reason I remember this is because there was your background in, yes, the spiritual recovery, but I had been getting intuitive hits. Like, you need to have someone on the podcast to talk about this topic
Connection.
and this energy and all of it. And so then the booth across from me, he was selling crystals, and he had created this AA. It's not really AA, but for spiritually, driven people, but not exactly AA. And so I was like, I'd love to maybe have him on. Is he the right fit? So you were like, anyway, it was just this whole thing of synchronicity. And in your session, it was, you need to bring and highlight that more to life. And you're like, no, I don't. No, I don't. And I'm like, this is what I'm getting. And so then, yeah. And
Oh, and my
being on,
cards.
yeah. And then being on the podcast, and then it sort of took off again
It
more.
did.
Yeah.
And I brought my deck of cards and I didn't know who I was
Yes.
bringing them for. And I had one deck left. I got an intuitive hit on the other two because I brought three decks that day. And then I still had one. I'm like, oh, I guess I'm not supposed to give this one away. But then that's when I saw you. And then I'm like, I'm giving these to you and I don't know why. And you said, I was told I was going to get a deck of cards and I didn't even
That
want
too. Yeah.
it. You're
Anyway,
like,
I
I
can't
don't
make
even
this
want
stuff
another
up. It
deck of
was just
cards.
so many. It was just all the breadcrumbs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lining up. And then we became friends and we stay in touch. And now I'm on your podcast. And again, thank you for having me.
And I've gotten so many clients from being on your episode because it's so insanely popular. And then the craziest thing, Nichole, is how great Spirit is at working with electronics because it's been 4 times now where I've been told that they're listening to your podcast and then it skips and goes to my episode. And
I
it was,
know that is how I just got chills. It happens so
I
many
did too.
times. There was actually even a woman who, and this is, I feel like crazy cool, that she said that she had never heard me before. She didn't listen to any psychic podcasts. It wasn't like she was searching for anything online. And she took her phone and she was trying to, you know how you can voice text, and she was
Mhm.
voice texting someone. And as she was trying to voice text whatever it was, it had nothing to do with anything spiritual or podcast related. My show description and podcast kept coming up, a psychic story, Nichole Bigley, with the descriptor and everything, to the point where she then called and left me a voicemail on the 1-800 number and said, I have no idea who you are or what's going on, but we had to connect. And so anyway, I don't want to get into that
Woo!
story too much
I
other
love
than
it.
it was to help her because she needed to not go even more spiritually, but get more on a spiritual practitioner path. And she's a tarot card reader, all these things. And I thought, how cool that our spirit teams and universe just connect us
Collaborate.
electronically like that. I had never heard anything like that before. Usually it's the
Yeah.
algorithms or just because you said something, it pops up. But this was like, I didn't know you from Adam. I was like, okay, well, great. Well, our spirit teams connected us.
Yeah, one of these people had never listened to your podcast before, and it the same thing. It just kept popping up, and then went to my episode, and she's like, "Okay," and then it ended up being like all the things she was going through at that
That's so
time,
cool.
right? And then another one, she asked her guides to show her. Then she said the very next person, and then she started playing one, but then it skipped and went to mine. And then that's how we connected. And I always ask my guides every day to please send me people I can help. So I think it's really powerful. We're both
Yes.
doing this, asking our guides, and then it's easy to collaborate that way. But yeah, they are good with electronics. We'll give them that. So are you a medium too? Like, do you like see dead people?
Well, I'm glad you asked the question because, and honestly, to tell you the truth, until I really got into the podcast, I didn't spend a lot of time trying to figure out what was what or what the difference was. And that's also one of the reasons why I started, or not obviously started the podcast, but named the podcast A Psychic Story, because the myth and misconceptions and even just the judgment with the simple term psychic can go so many different directions. But I felt like it was important to start there to kind of just get people to be thinking, okay, well, am I, but also what does it mean? And all of those other terms that might come with it. So I'll answer your question in a moment, but to take a step back, a psychic is essentially someone who can pick up on the energy of people, places, or things. So the one of the best examples I like to give that my spirit team gave me is if I were to blindfold you, put something over your head where you can't see, you can't hear, and then walk you into a room where it's crowded with people, and whether it's a party and it's a celebration or it's a funeral, then you're most likely going to be able to pick up on the energy of the place or the energy of the people, the overall vibe. And so that's a psychic, really, is psychic energy reading all the things. And so then a medium is usually defined as someone who can speak to or communicate with souls who have crossed over and are on the other side. Now, how we do that, I also think a medium can be communication with angels or what other types of beings, but most people use it for communication with people who have crossed over. And then how we do that is through our intuition or our psychic abilities. And there's a whole, list. There's up to 9 or more. The last time I checked, there were 9. I always thought that there were six, but that is if you're seeing, hearing, feeling, sensing, tasting, you name it, there's a psychic or intuitive sense from it. And while I do believe we are all psychic, not all of us necessarily have the ability to tune into each one of those, or they may not be as strong. So I like to use the example, I am not a mathematician. My brain doesn't go that way. I'm not a naturally born athlete, but there are other things that that come to me more naturally. And so I think that's kind of the same way with our psychic abilities. So to answer your question about the medium, I can speak to people who have crossed over. I don't really focus on or do that very often because one, speaking of me not being a natural born athlete, it's a little bit harder for me, but also the way that my guides and angels have explained to me, it's like a different frequency. It's not about higher or lower energy, but it is about, it takes a different frequency to tune in and talk to angels versus people who have crossed over, souls who've crossed over, and all of the other stuff. So, and depending on your frequency and you shifting it back and forth, there's that. So I can, I don't, it's not my favorite thing to do because it's harder and I don't want to disappoint people, but, yeah, it's not something that I do all the time. And I don't think looking back and when I was growing up that I really saw or experienced or spoke to souls that crossed over. My aunts, on the other hand, on my dad's side, they would see like full body people who had died and they were just there, all the time and in
No.
certain
I'm
situations.
like, no, I don't
And
want that.
and I remember when they were telling me when I was little, I was like, yep, nope, not interested. So maybe that's also it too. It never scared me. I was just like, nope, not interested. I'm good. I'm good. We'll just stop there with angels.
I prayed, please do not let
Yeah.
that happen because I have that like if I wake up in the middle of the night and there's just like someone standing at the end of my bed or something, that's not okay with me. So that's probably why I only see the orbs.
hmm
That's cool.
hmm
Like that's not scary at all, when you
Yeah, no, I
orbs they come
exactly.
around.
Exactly. And I only started seeing the orbs and those flashes of light after I got my Reiki master certification in my early 20s.
Mm.
So again, when I was younger, that feeling and the presence of angels was one thing. But then when I had my Reiki master certification, I feel like it kind of blew the doors off the hinges in a good way. And so to your point about I didn't want to see them. They're like, we're still here, but we want you to be able to see us, but not in a scary way.
Do you like see for me the mediumship thing is also a little bit freaky to me because it's like how do we know that they're not tricksters? Like how do we know it's not like okay, it's not really my mom, it's some, trickster trying to impersonate my mom or like you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like how do we know that?
Yeah. I mean, it's a good question. I would say it goes back to me being more psychic than anything. And the way I pick up on energy is I don't want to say personality, but it's the essence of someone's soul.
Mm.
So if I may see in my mind's eye a grandma, but just because that looks like a grandma and talks like a grandma or may say certain things, walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, that sort of grandma, whatever. But if I'm not picking up on grandma energy vibes or what grandma's personality may be or how grandma would make you feel if that sort of thing, then I know it maybe not be grandma. So to your question, for other people, who knows, you're absolutely right, but for me it's about the essence and the energy of that soul or that being, that energetic being, and how it kind of shows up, and that's how I think you can kind of tell the difference. um, you see that sensationalized things on television and movies all the time of, oh, it's a child, and then it ends up being a demon or something.
I know, right?
And I'm like, well, yeah, but Hollywood is showing you that that child has some pretty sinister energy behind it. It may
That's
not
right.
feel very childlike or be very childlike. So I don't know. I think that
Yeah.
way.
And that's what I think about too, like with learning to channel and things. Like I took a course on it and I started to feel like, I was getting stuff, right? And then I got a little bit freaked out and I pulled back. Is that a kitty or a doggy? I see
Oh,
somebody.
that's Zeus, my dog.
Oh, there he is. I just see that. Oh, there he
Oh,
is.
he just
Face.
pooped.
I didn't see the
Yeah.
face. So I was just, a little bit freaked out and thinking, well, how do I know what I'm channeling? I guess I didn't trust myself to have great discernment because how do I know like another, even just whatever frequency, how do I know they are who they say they are? Like, is this really Mary Magdalene or,
hmm
or Jesus?
Well, Yeah, that one I feel it's harder to kind of trick. You know what I mean? Again, I go back to the energy. You're going to feel the energy of Mary. You're going to feel the energy of
Mhm.
Jesus. If
Mhm.
it's just surface level where it's more of a mirror or not a mirror, but like a facade, and it doesn't feel deeper, then you know that you're probably not connecting. But I go back to intention. So if your intention is to connect
Oh, yeah.
with a being or a loved one or something, and that is your intention, then that's your intention about you doing that. So, 99.9%, that's who you're going to connect to or what you're going to connect to, because it's all about your intention. As far as my entire life doing this, that's what it's always been. There's only been like one or two maybe bad situations I've ever been in out of the thousands. So
Yeah, yeah. And anytime I've ever seen anyone channel Jesus or heard anyone, they start almost immediately crying
yeah,
and
it's just
it's
such
like
an
so intense.
overwhelming, yeah, it's
That'd
so
be a clue.
intense. It's such an overwhelming feeling of love, and just to the point where we can't even fathom and we can't even contain it. And it's a beautiful thing. But yes, you're
Right.
absolutely right.
Right. Like our human bodies, right? And then we're connected to I guess that's it. This is another good question that I think it will help a lot of people watching. So when someone goes to a psychic, and it's my understanding, and maybe I'm wrong, but you're kind of tapping into the quantum field. Like we're all electromagnetic beings, and you're seeing possibilities. So, and I know I've either talked to you about this or I heard you say it in your podcast, one or the other, that so many people give their power away to a psychic, but what they're really seeing is potentials and possibilities. Like if nothing, like they're reading your current energy, right? It's not like this is set in stone. This is what's going to
Mhm.
happen. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I think there are several things in there that based on your question. So I'm going to go around it a couple different
Okay.
ways. The first is that we all have free will and choice. So when we come here, it's my belief on earth, we have a certain we have certain things we want to accomplish and certain things that we want to do and experience here in our human life as Mary Beth and as Nichole and whatever. And so we have goals, we have objectives, we have purpose, we have mission, we have those things. And then just because we decided before we came here that we want to do those things and experience it doesn't mean we absolutely have to. It's not all destined, it's not all fate driven and everything else, because we have free will and choice. So that's kind of the first thing. The other thing is that when I talk about not giving your power away when you go to a psychic or you go to a medium or something else like that, it's like if you're looking for somebody externally to tell you what it is that you should do in your life, you're going about it wrong,
Yeah.
because, it may be some things where you're struggling and you need that support or you need some confirmation or some validation on some things. That's one thing. And you take it like a grain of salt, and it's input, it's data, it's information of, okay, does it resonate with me? Is it something that we talked about before we hit record, which you can share it or not, but does it resonate with me? Because if it doesn't, then you shouldn't just take it at face value. So that's a piece of it. But then the other part that you were asking is, how does a psychic or someone like kind of tune in? I think it's different. I can't speak on behalf of all practitioners and how they, or people that do it, whether you're a practitioner or not. But for me, it is about, again, reading the energy of something. So people, places, or things. Places have energy, just like things and objects have energy. People have energy because we have all these photons and neutrons, and we're vibrating at a denser state in the sense that then it creates this physical form. So it's all energy, it's all
Yeah.
matter, it's all, that form. So how we receive information or we pick up on it is going to be dependent on, again, how our intuition works. And for me, because I am psychic, I'm able to pick up on the energy of things. But then how it surfaces for me is different each time. And it all depends. I've found lately that it depends on the other person. It's almost like I mirror them a little bit. So if they have certain intuitive abilities, then my intuitive abilities that I'm able to do tap into that. And then I'm able to kind of communicate that way with them. So I'll give you an example. I'm very clairvoyant, meaning I'm very visual. So I see a lot. We talked about the angels. Like I'll see them
Yeah.
as light beings in my mind's eye. Well, if that's how someone's angels are showing up for me, most often that tells me that they're also clairvoyant or also probably have some visual capabilities, because I'm able to then describe what I'm seeing and I'm able to explain to them how it's coming through and it makes sense to them.
Mm.
So it's harder though, and I'll stop talking in a second, but it's harder though when you are trying to explain energy and how energy picks up, because um, it's almost like sometimes it's a gut knowing, sometimes it's more of an emotion. It's just experiencing the presence of something. Like I said with Michael, it's like all of it together,
Yeah.
almost like the intuitive abilities together, not just separate. So hopefully that
Very
explains a little
cool.
bit about what you
Yeah,
were
it
asking.
does. It does. And then you made, when you were speaking, the idea of, because you were talking about free will and stuff, the idea of blueprint comes up to my mind. Like, because are you familiar with Bashar and
Hmm.
Bashar channelings? So I heard Bashar say it that my brain finally grasped it, like for the like this concept, because it's like a challenging concept to grasp about the blueprint and free will versus what's already predetermined and predestined or whatever
Hmm.
people call it. But the way he described it was that we all have a blueprint of things we kind of we set out, like this is what we're going to do in this incarnation. But he said it's kind of like, okay, so the blueprint's going to be more like, okay, around this age, you're going to be in this hallway at this time. But you have the free will comes where, okay, do I turn right or do I turn left or do I go straight? That so it's like,
Hmm.
yeah, your blueprint's going to tell you you're going to be in the hallway, but your free will tells you right, left, or straight. You get to choose. What do I do? But yeah, so there's all these like little.
It's like a choose your own adventure
It
a little
is.
bit.
That's a
Yeah.
perfect way. That's really
Mhm.
good. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love it. I'm
My
stealing.
guides and angels showed me one time, more in my mind's eye, and this was the visual that they gave me. Back in the day when we were kids, for those that had these, you can relate. And they were kind of like those printed out books, and you could take a marker, and it was like a maze, and you could get to certain like the end. And sometimes it was a clearer path, and then others it would go all around. And anyway, so that's what they were showing me. It's like you're gonna get most of us are going to get to the end and what we said we were going to accomplish and do. But the path we take to get there may not be a straight line from A to
Yeah.
Z, for like to your point about the hallway. And so don't worry as much about how you're getting there. I'm one where I would much prefer to get to A to Z pretty easy and
Hmm.
simple,
Hmm.
but
No
we don't we're
detours.
not we're not all meant to, because of that free will and choice, because we make decisions real time in this life and we're like, yeah, I don't really want to do that anymore. Like whether we recognize we're doing it or not. So yes.
Yeah, I'm a 70s kid. I remember the Choose Your Own Adventure books. Like I was
Yeah, that too. Those
obsessed with
choose your own
them. Yeah,
adventure
when you
books.
said that, I'm like, I'm stealing that material. That's a great way to describe how it works. And we do have that ability, and we're given that gift of being able to create our own reality, right?
Exactly.
Through our choices, through every decision. And yeah, Bashar would even say like every decision we make, it's like okay, parallel life. Like we're shifting
Mhm.
constantly timelines. And I'm like, that's when my brain wants to blow up. But I'm like so attracted to quantum physics and stuff. But
Oh.
it also is like, psh,
Yeah. Well, to blow your mind, also is that there was a point in my life where it's not because somebody was in front of me and said, "Here's a ring and let's get married and let's have kids," but I could feel it coming. And again, was not dating anyone at this point, but I could just feel it energetically and intuitively. And my guides and angels were just, saying, now here's your time. And they showed me options, and I could see the house. I could see like the kids. I could see everything. And
wow,
then they said, do you like choose your own adventure? Do you want to go in this direction or do you want to go in this direction? And then I could see myself being single and like doing other things. Did not see the podcast, but I think that was honestly what was probably coming. And so I like tuned in. I was like, I really want energetically, I wanted that family life in one level, but the other part of me felt drawn and pulled on the other.
mhm,
And so at some point I was like kind of feeling like, did I make the wrong decision when I said that to them? And then they showed me, they're like, but on another timeline, you are living that life. Like you are
wow,
married, you do have kids, you are doing these other things. It's just like right now in your present, Nichole Bigley state in this year, whatever, you are experiencing through God and through your own eyes here, this other choice, this other path. So that gave me comfort too. If there's anyone ever listening of, I made the wrong choice or the wrong decision, or I missed out on that job or this person or whatever it is, it's like you are living multiple lives and multiple timelines and having the experiences. And so that should
Different level,
empower you, if
on our
anything.
soul level.
Hmm.
Just 2 hours ago, I was talking to a friend of mine on the phone, and we were discussing the Mandela effect. So this is just
Oh
funny.
yeah,
It just fits
that
right
one.
in. 'Cause
That
I
one I want to cover on Supernatural Matters at some point, but I'm about 4 or 5 years of not picking that podcast up again for a while. But yes, the Mandela effect. Did I? No, not yet. I have a script on it, but I haven't recorded it yet. But yeah.
So we were just kind of going over some of the common ones, and I mean, like the a lot of it's movie lines
Hmm.
and things that just everybody, like half
Is
the
it the
world,
Bernstein Bears or the
that one
Berenstain
too.
Bears?
Yeah,
Is
how do
it?
you remember that one? Because it's either
Honestly, it's like all muddled now because I think it was Berenstain. I,
EIN is how I remember it, and then Berenstain, AIN,
yes.
how actually was. But I had these books, and I actually have a photographic memory, and I know for sure it was not AIN. I know for
Yeah.
sure it wasn't. But here we are, where it actually is, and I'm like, that has to be a timeline shift, and it's not a coincidence that like half of the collective also
Hmm.
remembers it the way I remember it. Like it's very, very interesting. And then
And how it's called the Mandela effect is because Nelson Mandela,
yes,
people remembered him dying in prison,
yes, yeah, like half the
but
people.
he's alive.
Yeah, and then the other half didn't remember it that way.
Hmm.
And it's always just kind of like a 50-50 thing. And if you build it, they will come, is how most people remember it. But it's actually, if you build it, he will come, which I'm like, no, that's not how it went, but that's how it is now. And then Luke, I am your father.
Hmm.
He didn't say Luke,
Hmm.
apparently, in the real Star Wars.
There's a whole list.
A
Yeah.
whole list. And I was like,
There's a
we
whole
were going over that. And then she and I, we actually remembered things the same, which for the most part was
Fruit of the Loom was another one.
Fruit of the Loom.
Something
And Ed
about,
McMahon was given, I know that I saw him doing Publisher Clearinghouse and giving away big checks. They
and
said,
what was the
oh,
genie one? There's like a
Sinbad.
genie. Yes, and bad.
Sinbad, yeah. And apparently he never played a genie. But I remember him playing a genie. Um, my friend remembers Shaq doing that, but I think that was something else. But I
Hmm.
don't know. I don't know. But we were going over each one. And for the most part, she and I were 90% had the same timeline, I guess. But it was
You're
just
on.
blowing my
Yeah.
mind. I
Yeah.
recommend to anyone look into those because it's kind of
Yeah.
fun.
Well, also, when you look into it, because when I was researching for the episode that I have not recorded yet, and I can't recall off the top of my head exactly what it was, but there is like also psychology to it. So the argument allegedly is that, psychologically you're filling in the blanks or you are pulling in from something else that you remember. And I would say that that might be the case, but when you have, like you said, 50% of the population, and then you're so torn and you have such a collective group of people that remember it very, very differently and multiple things, it's very hard to,
Yeah, and some of them I can say, okay, it does make sense because like I can't remember what song it was, but when I like Googled the song and it was like one of the choruses, it had it that one way, and then so it was people were just
it
mixed
was
up.
something about We Are the Champions.
That's another one. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
saying that they didn't
At the
actually end it
end.
with
Yep.
of the world didn't happen, but I'm like,
Yes.
I remember.
Of the world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
He
I'm like,
did.
they
Yeah.
did. That was one we talked about today too. It's just very, very interesting. But yeah, I don't know. I don't even understand how that is. It's like, how come, I guess a glitch in the,
Well, I think that's the timelines. I don't know. I'm trying to tune in intuitively.
but the
What it
halves,
is.
I guess I don't understand how it's not like, why didn't we all switch timelines
Well, because if you
collectively?
think about it, and again, I'm not this quantum physics or scientist, but they say that it's almost like our bodies, not just our souls, but our bodies are like replicated. So it's like this,
Mhm.
think about it like ants. We just spread out. There's a million and one decisions we make during the day.
True.
And there's only certain decisions that we make during the day that like we stick with. And then there's also other parts of ourselves that decide to kind of go in that experience. Like I said, at one point in my life, my guides and angels showed me, do you want this kind of path or do you want this path? Because there was like it was where it was veering off. And so there was a part of my soul and the expressive part of Nichole that wanted to experience that, but the conscious self and awareness went in this direction. So to answer your question, I don't think it's like a 50-50 or it's like a split
Yeah.
as much as there's just multiple timelines and multiple dimensions and realities that we're pre-existing, and which is also why it's not past lives or future lives or present lives as much as it's
Yeah.
alter. So, and that's what hurts my brain. And then that's where I have to bring myself back down to earth and say, okay, I am Nichole Bigley in this moment in time on
I
here
feel
on earth.
that. I
And
feel
this is
that.
all I can process and understand at this moment in
Yeah,
time. But
I can only
yes,
go so far with quantum
yeah,
physics. And I got to reel it
yeah,
back in. Okay, you're going to make yourself, your brain's going to blow
yeah.
up. Stop.
But the
But I'm
part that I think is
fascinated.
so helpful for me, at least, or other people that are listening, is knowing that, again, that we have not just that free will and choice, we have all of these other millions of moments in time that we're experiencing, and that by thinking about it and just sending ourselves love and just even recognizing that, it heals. And I don't mean to sound too woo woo with that, but that it's almost, I share that because that's what spirit's asking me to do at this moment. Is if we feel like there was time in our lives when we were children where we needed to be a little bit more nurtured, or we had some trauma at a certain point in our lives, and we're thinking, oh, there's nothing I can do, it's over and done with. It is about, by you just thinking, I'm sending myself that love in that moment in time, it's healing then and it's healing now. We're not limited by this time, space, reality, and just here. So that's the other thing
Love
that I
that.
wanted to just share.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. I love that. And I love the word woo woo. Like I don't even see it as derogatory. Like or some people are, they say it condescending manner. And I'm like, I'm a member of the woo woo crew. Like I love woo woo. Like it's not,
Well, I didn't mean it that way as much as like the woo woo. I was getting real deep. So that's
well,
what I
a
meant
lot
by
of
it. But yeah,
people think of it
I
that
do
way.
that.
But I thought I'd address that and
I
say,
find
hey,
it fun.
there's nothing wrong with woo woo. But I
I had a
also,
friend that her husband was not into it, but he was super
yeah,
supportive, and she was off on the deep end in woo woo land, and he would call it wookie wookie. He'd be like, "Are you into your wookie wookie stuff?" And he would lovingly like joke
hilarious.
around about it. But yeah, you have to have some humor about it.
But I also am very logical, practical. I love the scientific stuff. So my favorite people would be the ones who are able to marry the science with the spirituality, like Greg Braden, Dr. Joe Dispenza, people
Hmm.
like that, who they've got that scientific, practical side. Because I also love evidence. I love collecting evidence because now we're at a stage where this stuff that used to be woo-woo can be proven with our technology because
I
we
know. It's
advanced
so
technology.
cool. It is
Yeah.
so cool now.
No longer a theory. It's proven.
Yeah.
Quantum physics, the most reliable science that we have. Dr.
Yeah.
Bruce Lipton, he's like
Yeah.
huge with this stuff. And yeah, we can actually prove a lot of that. I do want to go back to the third eye. Can you
Hmm.
explain that to us a little? And is there any way that anyone who's watching, we might be able to work on developing
Hmm.
the third eye?
Yeah, so our third eye, everyone has a third eye. And it's that's why it's called third eye. It's not
Yeah.
in between your two eyes, but it's
Oh, that's
right
what I always
usually in the
thought.
center of a
Okay.
little bit, like not quite center, but like right above here. And it's usually associated, well, one with your chakras, but also with someone's clairvoyance. And so the way that I refer to third eye is that, think about it almost like your creative imagination. That's really how you can tap into your third eye. And if you're thinking, well, is it my creative imagination or is it actual reality or what? Don't worry about that as much as that's how you get into and tap into your third eye or your clairvoyance. And for a lot of people, the way that the clairvoyance and the third eye will work is because if you do have the ability to visualize. So the example I like to give is, if I were to ask you to picture a balloon in your mind, can you picture a balloon in your mind?
Hmm.
Okay. And then so tell me a little bit about the balloon, what you're seeing.
Mine was red. I don't know why.
Hmm.
It just was red and it had the string on it. It was a helium and I saw clouds around
Hmm.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so whomever's out there, and you also too pictured a balloon, whatever color it was or whatever else, some people may have, it could have been a helium balloon, it could have been a birthday balloon, it could have been deflated, it could have been floating, it could have been tied. Like, there's so many things, but
True.
that is it's using our creative imagination to start to understand that that is how clairvoyance, or how messages and information can come in. Now, how you start to strengthen it and work with it more is then moving out of like I just told you, that's planting a seed. I said, visualize something. If I were to then hold an image of a balloon in my mind and picture it in a certain way, and then try and send that information, which I'm not doing right now, but I will in a second. If I were going to do that, then that is also you trying to pick up on, like, it's almost like I'm tossing you a ball, or I'm tossing you a
Oh
baton.
yeah.
So you're trying to pick up on it. So we can do that now. If everyone wants to kind of close their eyes, and I'm going to picture a balloon in my mind, and it's going to be a certain texture right now. It's going to be a certain shape. I know people are probably like, a shape, but yeah, balloon can be many, many shapes. And I would say color, but it's more going to be like, color adjacent. And right now, just so it's like you just take your time, like kind of picturing it, and don't force it. Just, some people may have come really quickly. Some people, they're taking a little bit more time, but don't force it. So if you feel like you're forcing it, just take some deep breaths in, some deep breaths out, and be like, okay, and then start to picture it. Now what I'm doing is I'm going to start to amplify the energy a little bit more. So that's just me basically expanding my energy out and like asking my guides and angels and everybody else's guides and angels to start help them visualize this balloon in the way I'm seeing it. Okay. Now we can say thank you, and the balloon can kind of just float off. We can open up our eyes. I usually will ask the person what they're seeing first, but I'm going to share what I actually did,
Okay.
or what I was actually picturing. And so I was picturing one of those more like metallic kind of
That's what a
balloons.
Mylar balloon.
Yeah.
That's what I
Yeah.
saw.
Like the one, like not birthday, it didn't have a shape. It was like a regular, but it was like silver, and it was like that metallic, and it was like kind of crunchy kind of shape. And then it was like bouncing, and it was going like this. And that was the balloon. And then when I said let it go, and then it just went up kind of in the air. So don't feel dissuaded if you didn't get that exact balloon. The point is, because that was a very, very quick exercise. So that's why I say don't feel
I got the
disappointed.
Mylar balloon and I was like trying to focus on you. It was like right away. And then I was like, it can't be my first thing. So then I tried to like switch it, but I kept going back to that one, the metallic Mylar balloon.
Yeah, yes.
Cool.
So that
Is that what they're
is
called?
one, yeah, that's one kind
Okay.
of that's one kind of exercise, but also I want to kind of, they're asking me, they be my guides and angels, to share a little bit more about the experience. Is that if you didn't see a balloon because you're not visual, don't worry, you can still be clairvoyant. You can receive information, or you really asked about third eye, but I associate the two together.
Yeah, I do
Um,
too.
yeah, okay, good. I just want to make sure. And that could be through dreams, it could be through predictions, it could be a multitude of different ways. But also if you heard a thought in your mind, or you saw a word, so you could have, or if you just knew. So the reason I'm bringing all that up is your different intuitions or intuitive abilities are going to show up a little bit differently. So you still may have gotten intuitive hits. It just may not have been through your third eye.
Yeah.
Now, really quickly before I forget this, because I do want to answer your other question, in terms of being able to work on your third eye more, you can do really simple things like I love to do sun gazing. So it's not about going outside when staring at the sun with your actual eyes and burning your eye sockets out,
Don't do that.
your eyeballs out. Yeah, don't do that. That's not safe, but it is. Oh, hi, kitty, kitty.
Yep. Wait, I knew you'd come to visit. This is
Oh,
TJ. My
hello.
co-host TJ is here.
Hello, TJ. Love you. And but you could kind of just, with your eyes closed and your face up to the sun and your forehead pointed at it, that studies have shown that if you do that for about 5 minutes, so it's very hard for us to kind of just sit there. So even if you can't do it for 5 minutes, that's fine. It also decalcifies your pineal gland up there. And that is also helps open up your third eye. So that's something super simple you can do. Um, and then just practicing different types of visualization, again, through your creative imagination, helps open that door for you to receive intuitive hits that aren't being, driven by you or the seed planted by someone else. You start to receive more visual hits within your third eye. The other thing you can do is, they're sharing this with me. This is why I'm closing my eyes. I used to do this when I was younger, is I would just put a crystal on my forehead, especially like a
Oh,
clear quartz crystal. And I would just like put that bad boy on there and just let it kind of percolate and everything. But those are some easy ways for you to work on your third eye.
nice. And then for people who don't play around with crystals, like I've got like so many crystals, it's just that they have a higher frequency. Or how would you say, like, why do crystals work for people and for healing?
Well, crystals are in our computers and our laptops and our TVs and our phones. They're in all of our electronics, and they're essentially like a motherboard. And the reason why it's technology and it's being used in electronics is because it helps hold energy, and it also helps amplify and extend it. So that is just one thing. And it's because it's a conductor, essentially, similar to like water or whatever. But my understanding with crystals is they have, I want to say personalities. They're telling me not to filter. They're very, each crystal kind of has a personality and an energy related to it and properties. And so because they're of the earth and because they have been here for eons and, they're older than mankind itself, it
Mhm.
has and holds that space of Gaia and Mother Earth, but also wherever they grew and on the world and holding and retaining those properties. So when we use them in work, spiritual type of work, it helps us to stay grounded. They help us to stay grounded. They can help clear our energies. If you're ever interested, I'm not necessarily a crystal expert, but there's plenty of different kinds of crystal books out there, apps and things, but certain ones have certain properties, like so smoky quartz is very protective, grounding energy. Clear quartz is a good one for everything. Rose quartz is for love or
Yeah.
pulling in, yeah, romance, but also just if you're feeling like you're lacking in that and you need more self-care or self-love. Amethyst is also another good healing crystal, but also for protection too. It's a pretty universal one. So I could go on and on and on. Again, I know I said I'm not a crystal expert, but I grew up with them and
It
I have a
sounds
million of
like
them
you
too.
kind of are.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's also just because this is what they're telling me. They're like they're reminding me of the things. But yeah, so if you're ever interested, but while I feel clear quartz is really good, is because it's just a universal crystal they're saying, and it will really help if there's a lot of times if we're thinking too much, we get in our head and it can really clog our chakra there, our third eye chakra, and it will stop us from receiving our intuition or intuitive messages and information from source. And so that will help us clear it. That's why they were saying place it on there.
And that's the clear quartz crystal to use
Hmm.
that for? Okay,
Yeah,
very
just
cool.
any sort of clear quartz works.
That's very helpful. I'm glad I asked about crystals. That, none of this conversation was planned, you guys. We're just
Yeah.
going with the flow, and
We were like, let's have a conversation.
the
They
things that
told me
are
it was going to
supposed to
be,
come up will come up. They're
yeah, they
supposed to.
told me it was going to be all over the place, but in a good way. That's what they said. I
You
was
know
like,
me. There's like
well,
she's
it
the
was
tangent
more
queen.
because, yeah, it was more, I was like tuning in of, okay, what do I need to prepare for? And they were like, all the things. And I was like, okay.
That's perfect. Thank you. Yeah, they're like she loves going off on tangents and here and there. And so before I go off on another tangent, since we're almost out of time, I want to talk about your book, your new book.
Oh, yeah.
Looking for Angels, a guide to understanding and connecting with angels. And with your co-host, your co-author's name, is it Scott Guerin? Guerin?
Yeah. Yes. Dr. Scott Guerin.
Dr.
Yes.
Scott. I met him at the Victory of Light for a second.
Yes, you did. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So what do you want to know about it? Just want me to
Like,
share a
just
little
like,
bit about
yeah,
it?
share a little bit about it. Like, why would somebody want to buy your book?
Yeah, yeah. So I actually, again, having communicated, spoken with angels my whole life, it's part of breathing for me. So I love them so much. And while I have the podcast, they do come up quite a bit as I'm just like with you. When I say they, I'm like my spirit team.
Yeah.
And so they're my co-hosts essentially on the podcast as well. And one night I was preparing for a client session, which is actually a funny story too. I didn't really want to do sessions, not because I don't love connecting with people, but I just have a lot going on. I have a full-time job, I have a podcast, all these things. But
Right.
my guides and angels said, you need to provide sessions and you need to work with people. And I said, why? And they're like, don't worry about it. You'll find out. And I was like, okay. But anyway, so the point of that is that as I was preparing for the session, it was really helping me start to develop my intuitive abilities a lot more, not just with this session, but other sessions. And I'm tuning into this client's energy. And I just heard it was, again, more of a thought hearing. You need to write about us. Because part of their question was, how do I connect with my guides and angels and who is on my spirit team and all of that? And so I pushed it aside and I was like, I'm busy. I'm trying to channel information for this person before the session, and I heard it again. And so it was just so insistent that I said, all right, like I got to prepare for this session. Let's pick it back up in a little bit. But and then after the session, I said, all right, let's revisit the conversation. And I said, I have a lot going on. I need you to help me prioritize. If you want me to write this book, I need either the publisher to come or the money to come to self-publish or a ghostwriter, or not that I really wanted to ghostwrite, but just like somebody that's going to help me with the thing. And I said, and if you make that happen, then I will honor your request. And I thought I had bought myself some time. Like we're talking several months at least, if not a year or 2 years. Cause like to
Or to
manifest
get
something
for
like,
them to coordinate it. Yeah.
yeah, like, yeah, I'm just like, fine, you go do that. And then I'll just keep my own my merry little way and whatever. And so then not even 48 hours later, I think it was a little over 24 hours. It was under 48 hours. I had an email from Scott in my inbox and it said, I'm writing a book about angels. And I wrote about the science part and the psychology and the religion part about angels, but I need someone who can help me with the modern day angels. Like, how do people actually connect? And I found you on the podcast. I've been listening to you for a while.
Oh, you didn't even
And
know him. Wow.
yeah, I didn't even know him. And then simultaneously, right around when I was getting that message in the session, he was at an event and had received information from either a psychic or a medium saying, I see that you're writing another book and you need a female voice and blah, blah, blah. So that prompted him to reach out to me. So it was literally like just the worlds colliding. So that's how it got started. And then it evolved. It was supposed to be kind of a simple, hey, Nichole, you're writing a chapter about connecting with angels. And as I sat down and was talking to my angels, they were a little demanding. They're like, no, we said you need to write about us. And so now it ended up being like part 2 of the book section. And it talks all about what's intuition? What are my intuitive abilities? How do you work with your intuitive abilities? Because that's how I connect with them. Like you can see signs all day long and numbers and repeating stuff, but ideally, if you're someone that wants to know more and communicate with them on a regular basis, this book's going to help you do that. The thing I love the most, because I put everything in this book that I would want, that I had wished was available to me
Nice.
when I was growing up or trying to figure it out, is also more like a dictionary or an encyclopedia of who are the archangels, who are they, but also what they stand for, how can you work with them, and then also some ascended masters. There's not all the ascended masters in there because it would be like the book would be like this thick. But I asked which ones wanted to be featured. And then a lot about that is then at the end, what are the exercises that you can do to speak with them, but also to help you with your intuition and everything else. So it's all kind of like supposed to be a book. If you're skeptical and you want to learn more, that's usually, I don't want to say Scott's part, but it kind of walks through all that. And then if you really want to dive in and understand, then that's the second part of the book.
So it's kind of like I was saying, you've got the science and the spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you said he's a doctor. So
Mm-hmm.
what kind of doctor?
Yeah. Doctor of psychology.
Oh, very cool. So
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Yeah, that I got to actually still get your book.
Well, I'll give you one.
Yeah, I was going to get it when I
Come
was
on
at
over.
Victory of Light, and then I wanted to talk to you, and you went into a session, and then I got pulled in so many directions that day, and then I never got a chance to. That was this last time I was up there, but I'm going to definitely get one. And so you guys, you have to tune in to A Psychic Story, Nichole's podcast. It is amazing, the one I got addicted to. And also, do you still do sessions or
I do.
you,
Yeah. I'm
you
going to be
do?
wrapping up in a little bit. That's just what they keep telling me. Again, my guides and angels, but who knows as far as the timing, but I do still do sessions as of now for when this is going to air. And I
Right.
probably
And
will
then we
be.
don't
Yeah.
know, like maybe someone might hear it a couple years from now and you'll be doing sessions again, even if you
Yeah.
quit. So
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
check out, email Nichole or, you can find her like Instagram. Like I found all your stuff on Instagram just from there. Like I got all the ways to contact you and your bio and everything. And I highly recommend a session with you. I incorporate all of the things that we discussed in my session and
Oh, awesome.
it's been
Yeah.
extremely helpful. Yeah.
Like I said, in one ear, out the other. I don't remember
You
other
don't
than the
remember.
fact
Yeah.
that I said, yeah, yeah, yeah. But no, that's great. I'm glad it was
Your
very
brain,
helpful for
yeah,
you.
you don't need to retain all that stuff about other people. I get it. That would be
Too much information in this head.
TMI. Yeah. You don't need it. Well, Nichole, I really appreciate you being a guest on the show. And to anyone, again, I'm going to have all of her information in the show notes, the description box. If you're watching on Facebook, you'll find it. I'm going to have all of her information, how to reach her, and how to buy her book. It'll be the one link, I think. Right?
Yeah. So, well, you can get the book wherever you get I almost said your podcast. You can get the book wherever you get your books. It's at Walmart, it's at Target, it's at Amazon, Barnes and Noble. There's also an audiobook version too, which I found that a lot of people like because it's hard to read the exercise if you want to have that. Yeah.
I'm not
So the
audit.
audiobook. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it on Audible?
Audible. And what's the other one? I
I heard that
forgot.
was so expensive to do an Audible book. Is it as bad as I heard? Okay.
I don't think the price, well, yeah, it was about the same, but the difference is because when you're printing, like when you're self-publishing, because we did have some publishers that were interested, but we decided to self-publish. They
I self-publish my stuff too.
Yeah, yeah. It's like you basically, it's like print on demand. It makes it so easy now. But the cost was really going into the studio because I don't want my dogs, like making sure you have quality, consistency rather of the content. But man, that was a whole process and a conversation for the other day. But yeah, but it's on Audible and what's the other one? Anyway, it can be found twice.
Kindle?
Huh?
Is it on Kindle?
Kindle, thank you. Well, Kindle's yeah, yeah. But there's another audio one. Anyway, if
Oh,
you
there
get
is.
audiobooks, it's on there. Audible's the big one.
Yeah, that's the one that I use. I just am so much better at listening than sitting, but that's something I need to, do better at is sitting down, holding a good old fashioned book and reading, but I'm probably going to buy yours on Audible to be honest with you because then
It's okay. Scott did his portion and I did my portion. So if you've listened to the podcast, you'll hear our voices again.
that's awesome. I'm excited. All right, guys. So if you like this episode, please go ahead and hit like. Please subscribe to this podcast and share this episode with anyone you know who would be interested in listening to things about spirituality and psychic stories on Nicole's show. She has a new psychic. Like, how often is it weekly? You have a
It's
new,
weekly now.
it is weekly now. Yeah. She has a new psychic and very cool. Every episode is amazing. I'm still so obsessed. I'm addicted.
Yay. Well, I'm glad. It's a good addiction to have.
It is. It is. It's a positive addiction. Well, thanks again, Nicole. I appreciate your time. Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you. Bye, everyone.